The Victoria is a Tier 8 premium Spanish battleship, the only Spanish battleship in World of Warships Legends, and the reward for the April 2026 campaign. I've got two matches for you, and this first one here was actually my very first battle in the ship. I've also got two different builds. I'll start off with showing you the first one now. The mod selection is going to be the same all around. Aiming Systems Mod 1, Propulsion, Concealment, Main Battery Reload, and then the commander, Jose Ferrandiz y Nino. You can see here we've got a couple of his special skills selected, including in the fourth row and the legendary row. Inspirations are Kondo and Swirsky for extra concealment. I think that's valuable on all battleships, and that was the way I wanted to inspire this commander. Your mileage may vary. But I did end up going away from this build, and I'll show you what I went to once we reach the second battle. I just felt like this build with the unique skills selected in the fourth and legendary rows were lacking a bit on survivability. But this build really does buff the main battery gun, so we'll have to talk about that momentarily. But first, the initial salvo, the very first salvo I took with the Victoria against a somewhat broadside Vanguard. The Victoria, of course, has the Spanish cruiser gimmick of the ready rack, so you can fire two salvos every time, and in this case, we do about 20,000, 19,000 damage to the Victoria across two salvos. Frankly, that's a little bit on the low end. I've had some better results than that, somewhere around 40k, and I think we'll see that in the second battle. Anyway, we should talk about this commander's unique skills and how they affect the guns. The first one is in the fourth row. It's called Ready to Rack. It reduces the main battery reload per main battery hit for a battleship with a ready rack by 0.5% per hit, up to a maximum of 10% reload reduction once you get enough shell hits. And then on top of that, it improves the main battery dispersion by 5%. And then the legendary skill, Rebuilder. It reduces damage control party cooldown time, reduces battleship reload time by 5%. The damage control party reduction is 40%. Increases battleship main battery range by 10%. And also, it makes the DCP count limited. You can see we've got 4 in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen next to the HP bar. That is because of the Rebuilder skill. If instead you choose the Fight Fire with Fire skill or the Testudo skill in the legendary row, you'll have unlimited DCP like any conventional battleship. It's just with this skill that gives you the 40% DCP cooldown that you have a limited number. And the cooldown is quick. It is 45 seconds. The damage control lasts for a duration of 15 seconds with that build, but frankly, I didn't find that it was worth using. It might be if you use fully packed instead of the unique row in the fourth skill, but I don't know. The survivability is just a little bit lacking with it. Anyway, for this build, you do get some good stuff out of the main battery guns. With it, we've got a range of 20.4 kilometers, and the guns reload in 29.9 seconds. That's with the ready rack fully filled as well, so quicker than a lot of battleships with 9 guns, which is what we've got here. And these are 381 millimeter or 15-inch guns. Certainly not the biggest for Tier 8, and also they feature the absolute lowest AP Alpha Strike in the game, which makes sense, because they're firing twice every time, but the AP shell maximum damage is a mere 9,000. I don't think there's anything that comes even close to that. However, the penetration on these guns is excellent, featuring an 880.9mm pen at point-blank range, and then 487 at maximum range. I suppose it falls a little bit off there. It might not be enough to chew through the most heavily armored battleships, but even still, we can get citadels on something relatively lightly armored like the Vanguard, and you can see repeatedly firing at this guy here has yielded a lot of damage, 72,000 up until this point. The HE, I haven't really shot it much, but I suppose this thing might be okay at farming some fires with the double salvo every time, but the HE, 5100 maximum damage, only a 24% fire chance. Things also got 2.15 Sigma with this build and a 27.3 second turret traverse. So the specs, I'd say, are pretty good on this particular build. It's just we're missing out on survivability, and the Victoria is not the most HP blessed battleship out there. We've only got 64,800, which I think is kind of low for tier 8. And then the heals that we do have, of which there are 3 base, are just conventional heals that restore 323 HP per second for a duration of 28 seconds. And so I felt like after playing this ship with this build a few times that I wanted to switch to Master Mechanic in the 4th row, and that's what we're going to end up doing in the next battle. Also, I should note that the AP shells, in addition to having really low damage numbers, also don't have any kind of special pen angles either. Minimum ricochet angles 45 degrees like everything else, guaranteed is 60 degrees. The maneuverability, by the way, with this build, we have a 30.9 knot top speed. That is with the speed flag, though, and that is without using gyrating drill bits, which I did end up switching to. The ship, though, with its ready rack gimmick, is pretty fun, and I haven't even mentioned yet that the thing also comes with a main battery reload booster. This is a little bit worse of a reload booster, though, than the conventional ones that you might find on, say, the French battleships. I think those reduce the reload time by 50%. This reload booster only reduces it by 33.3% for a duration of 25 seconds. I think between the ready rack reloading, I think the time is somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20 seconds with the reload booster active. So you certainly get the shells back quicker, so you can send them out again, but it's not going to be as fast as you might be expecting. Basically, I think you would use it if you have something that's going to be broadside for long enough that you can hit it twice with the ready rack and then pop the reload booster to get it chambered again. Although I've tried to do that a few times, and frankly, the reloading is slow enough that a couple ships which were broadside when I fired my initial salvo had already turned to angle by the time the guns were fully reloaded and ready to go again. It's nice to have, but I don't think it's game-breaking, and I don't think either that this ship is massively overpowered or anything like that. It could be, it certainly has the potential to be, with basically a built-in reload booster on every salvo you do. But with the AP damage being rather anemic at 9,000, I think it's okay. And I also think it's a pretty fun ship to play. It makes you think a little bit differently about how you're going to engage in the battle. One thing that's not good about it at all, really, is the AA defenses. As you can see, we've shot down 3 planes up until this point, and this CV is going to continually harass us until this battle is over. We're at 26,000 HP of our relatively low HP pool, and we just are not going to have enough sustain to survive for the duration of this battle. We're approaching this Republique, hoping he might be broadside as we come around the corner. This CV is just going to take us out soon anyway, so we might as well do as much damage as we possibly can. Trying to aim for the Citadel underneath the turrets, but actually hitting a little bit to the right of that. And, well, you can see there the main battery guns get taken out by the Republique. Had that happen a number of times in close brawling range, so you do want to be careful about it. And this is basically a Veneto or a Roma hull, as far as I can tell, so it's pretty tanky. It's got a 32mm bow and stern, of course, like pretty much every battleship does, but the upper belt armor is actually quite robust at 70mm, and the deck armor is 45, so it is enough to protect you against things like the Republique and even the Yamato and things that can overmatch 32, as long as you're angled, but not a lot of HP, and it does seem like the armor is thick enough to arm a bunch of shells if they do hit and pen. So we go down in that battle, only 113,000 damage, but on to the second battle, where the damage is a little bit more impressive, as well as the XP. Now, in this battle, we are using the second build, which I'll show you here. You can see it's a bit more conventional. We've opted for gyrating drill bits in the second row to increase the AP alpha. And instead of using the ready to rack skill in the fourth row, we've got Master Mechanic, and then we've got Fight Fire with Fire in the legendary row. I think this is while it's a more conventional battleship build, I think it's probably the better way to go because it increases the survivability. You have to trade a lot to go into the special skills for the main battery gun buffing, but without those active, I think the main battery guns are pretty good. I'll tell you the specs here in a second, but I also wanted to mention in the third row, we do have the on second thought skill. And that reduces the shell type switching if all main battery guns are fully reloaded by 55%, which is not the reason we're using it. It's the second feature, which reduces the main battery reload time by 5%. On this build for this battle, that is the only skill we've got buffing the reload time on the main battery guns. I believe it was 29.9 seconds with the first build. It's 31.4 with this one. Really not all that much of a difference. The only other sort of major difference here is that the range with this build is 18.7, but with the first one, it's a little bit longer at 20.4. So if range is important to you, you might not want to copy this and you might want to go with the first one, but I think I'd rather have this. 31 seconds, I'd say, is perfectly fine. The AP also, with gyrating drill bits, does a maximum damage of 9,720 instead of 9,000 even, which I think goes quite a long way to increasing the damage output and is probably partially why we're going to get significantly more damage in this battle. You can see here the shots against the GK, which I think is the only ship we've shot at up until this point. 44,000 damage with a couple salvos his way. The thing does have secondaries, by the way, but they aren't worth mentioning or speccing into. And I don't think we've talked about the maneuverability either with this build. With the first one, I think it was about 30 knots. This build, we've got 28.8 knots. That is with the speed flag. Without the speed flag, it's 27 point something. So kind of slow for tier 8. Maybe not as slow as the Minnesota or something like that. 810 meter turning circle, 15.5 second rudder shift. The maneuverability feels really good. The thing turns well. It's responsive. I like it. The speed is just a little bit low, but it's not terrible by any means. And then the concealment. I think it's actually quite bad base. It's in excess of 15 km, which is not good. But with Kondo and Swirsky, both of whom are high level, I've got 12.3 km concealment, which is how I'm going to stick with it, I think. You could get better concealment than that, too, if you use the universal Spanish commander, sort of the way that I built the incomparable with, I can't remember his name, Jellico, for the ultimate stealth build. I think we had like 10.5 or 10.7 km detect. No, it was 10.1 with incomparable. If you really wanted to go all out on that with this ship, you could get 10.5, which is perhaps a bit scary, especially since you can send out 2 salvos with every salvo you do. Of course, you do run into a problem when you find angled ships like the Montana here bow tanking us. These are only 15-inch guns, 381 millimeters, so it's not like they're going to be overmatching anything you're going to encounter, except maybe really lightly armored cruisers, and against battleships that are presenting unfavorable angles like this, the damage can be pretty bad, even if you do aim at the superstructure. And, even if you do that, you might have noticed up until this point that sometimes the salvos are really accurate and look really nice. Other times, they look like shotgun dispersion. Now, to be fair, I'm not really speccing into the accuracy in any way in both of the builds I showed you, except for Flammable Cannoneer in the first row of battleship skills. I feel like that's pretty much all you need. And since you're firing 2 salvos every time, the lack of accuracy on one individual salvo, well, I think it's less of a problem than it might otherwise be on some battleships that fired less than this thing does. I mean, effectively, you're sending what? We've got 9 guns here, so you're sending 18 shells downrange at any given moment. That's a lot of damage potential. Just, ask the GK there how much damage we've done to him up until this point. And also, up until this point, I should mention that the battle's going well for the blue team. We've knocked out one of the enemy destroyers, we've taken the Alpha and the Bravo caps, and now we're just going to move on over to the Bravo area because it seems like that's where the entirety of the enemy team is. Just shooting at this GK as he kites away. Montana, I believe, is hiding behind that island over there on pretty low HP. Kind of regret sending that salvo at the GK now, actually, if Montana's just going to come right around there. 6K doesn't seem like a good reward either, but Montana, somewhat broadside, gets hit pretty hard by one of our teammates there, and ultimately he gets taken out before our shells even reach. But you can see there, the damage against us, not too bad. The armor is good. We do get full pen there, I think, for 5K because we're not angled quite well enough, but if you angle properly, you can bounce pretty much all the shells and be very tanky. Now this flank is clear. Aside from the destroyer, which I believe has been chased out, our friendly destroyer is to the west of Alpha, and he's headed north now in the last known location of that enemy. So I don't think we have anything to worry about here. We just need to get to the other side of the battle and, get some stuff happening with the ships over there. We're at 71,000, but that's about, I think, less than half the damage we're going to end up doing, so still more to come. But there is a bit of a lull in the battle right now, so I'll say I think it's easy enough to recommend the Victoria. It's a unique ship with this ready rack gimmick. I don't think it's too ridiculously powerful even with this gimmick, and I found it a lot of fun to play. I've also thought it was a decent ship that had some nice carry potential in spite of the smaller guns for the tier and the somewhat questionable survivability. Again, I don't think this is a lot of HP, but so far, this is my favorite ship out of the new update. I've at least surveyed some of the Pan-American cruisers and also the new Pan-Asian destroyer, the Siliwangi. I was not impressed really at all by any of the Pan-American cruisers so far or by that destroyer. Just first impressions, I haven't played enough. I spent most of my time yesterday focused on this ship to form an opinion and get a review, but overall I think I'm a little bit disappointed with this update, to be honest. The campaign ship seems good to me, but I don't understand the purpose of the Pan-American line or why you might want to play it. And the Siliwangi, even though it does have excellent sonar and I think can be built for stealth sonar, it's got decent guns as well. It just hasn't sort of struck me yet as a ship I really like, but that'll be the next thing I work on. It's easy enough, though, to recommend Victoria, and even in a situation like this, where we've got the Somme, who's on relatively full health, we're shooting AP, which maybe isn't ideal. We've got the 2 salvos, though, and that's a lot of damage to do to the destroyer. That's going to be pretty good for our teammate there to finish him off, and once he goes down, there's only 1 destroyer left, which is spotted inside of the Charlie cap, and I think not long for this world. There's a Johann de Witt in front of us as well, which we probably should shoot at. He could, launch his airstrikes and be a bit of a pest to us, but I think instead what we're going to do is shoot at the GK so that there's no threat on our broadside at all. Then we can deal with the Johann de Witt. That was my thought process here anyway. And once again, we see the 2 salvos out in quick succession, about 9 or 10K there, and another 5K there. 9 shells in total. Not exactly impressive. You do have to shoot a number of times, but the reload, it's really not that bad. I think, isn't it better than the Spanish cruisers? Maybe not. I've been using that one skill that gives you 3 salvos in the ready rack, which really increases the reload time. So this is probably actually worse than the Spanish cruisers. There goes the GK. That's technically our first kill of the game, following 2 fists, and we're up to 110,000 damage. for this final sequence. The enemy team is entirely concentrated on the Charlie Cap area now. Both enemy DDs have gone down. We've still got both of ours, and one of them is posted up in front of these Reds, providing spotting and undoubtedly launching torpedoes at them. So I'd say we've got every advantage in the book right now, even though it is a 5v4, and theoretically it could be anybody's game, but with the positioning of the Red team, I don't think they've got a snowball's chance. And the enemy Victoria looks like he's going to be broadside to us, along with the enemy A-Gear. We're looking at the Izumo right now, but it's going to become clear momentarily that we're really going to be in a position to wreck this Victoria. We'll be able to see how well we do. We're going to end up with quite a bit more damage than what we've got now, so it's got to come from either the Victoria or the A-Gear. I think this smoke screen here, launched by the deceased enemy destroyer, I presume, is also going to make it so that the A-Gear and Victoria don't spot us initially. One shell catches the island there for the A-Gear, but there's a nice citadel with 4 shells hit, and the second salvo is out. A-Gear is pretty much toast. He's just got a little bit more HP, and our teammates, I think, are going to take that, considering he goes dark. Victoria still spotted though. Ready rack almost ready to go, not quite. And it looks like Victoria's gonna back off so that we aren't gonna be able to get his broadside. What a shame. We'll just have to push into the cap, which is occupied by either the Izumo or the other unspotted cruiser, or both, who knows. We don't need to take it though. We just need to get a little bit more damage, and we need to not be dumb because it now is even 4v4. And if we go out here and just throw away our ship, there is still a small chance that the enemy team could claw it back and win the battle. The enemy Victoria is still pretty healthy, and the Izumo at least has half HP or something like that. You saw there, though, against the salvo, or on the salvo against the A-Gear, that the results weren't great. I think we got about 1,000 damage there with that whole salvo. So, you know, sometimes these guns are going to troll you. That's what I've found. If you can't stand terrible accuracy from time to time, this ship might not appeal to you as much as it does to me. And again, the damage really falls off when the enemy's angled like that Victoria is. You see there, 972. Not exactly impressive. That's the value of 1 over pen when you only have 9,700 damage on your AP. Johan de Witt, the ship that we didn't shoot at initially. Maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to make up for that. I don't know why we're looking at the Izumo, by the way. Shoot at the cruiser when you're playing the battleship. It's better for you. Better for your team, too. Johan de Witt, broadside to us, and, well, no chance. You don't want to be a cruiser broadside to this thing. It'll take you out. High caliber, 169,000 damage, 2 battles in the Victoria. And I think what we've got here is a pretty fun ship that's worth grinding for the campaign. In fact, on first impressions, I think it's the best ship of the update, better than the Pan American cruiser line, maybe better than the Silwangi. That one I still have to play more, but it's the only ship that I've immediately had fun with. Let's just put it that way. So I would certainly recommend it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.